Stitch with me. Today we are going to continue some work on our Peacock Mandala. Let's get started. I had a friend here working with me yesterday and she wanted to work on mandalas, so that's what we worked on. And so I have done a few things since last time. I went through, I think the last time you might have seen this would be when it had these little V's out here were done with a stem stitch, and I did have the little the mini little peacock eyes here that are just a fly stitch with a French knot in the middle. And then I went ahead and added 3 pistol stitches in each of these spots, and I decided to surround this whole shape with the turquoise. And so I did a fly stitch there. You see that? Turn it this way. Might be a little bit easier to see. Yes, there's the fly stitch right there. And then I came back and did stem stitch around the outsides and then down in between the stitches. So that's how I got those. And then because this whole project for me is supposed to look like peacock eyes, I went ahead and added these little guys in that one. And then she and I worked on one of the bigger, while she was working, I was working on this one. So what do you do on the motif stencil? Let's grab the motif stencil. This one is the motif one. What do you do in these big spaces out here? You have the option of doing lots of different little things in that space or using it all as one big space. Part of the reason that I chose this one for the peacock is that I decided I wanted to see if I could fit peacock eyes in both this shape right here. There we go. This shape right here and the bigger one out here. This one's wider and not as deep, but I think I can fit a peacock eye in both of them. So I Googled peacock eyes and then I drew this one, and at the time I only had a white pencil and I've used it to mark. You can see we'll work on this one next. I used it to mark where the lines are, and then I can position it on the next one. I did these 3 little humps right here because that is the ones that are, there's one in the center of each of these points, and then that top point goes up to the top one. And then to mark it, remember that marking works best if you are spinning or twisting your pencil or whatever marking device you have. Now I am marking on this tablecloth, which gives it a little bit of thickness, and I'm a little concerned that that my pencil will go right through my wool and that I'm not actually marking. But I don't want to move it. Until I'm done, because it's white marks, I won't be able to see them through this vellum. But I think my vellum pattern will hold up for all, is it 8 spots I have around here? Okay, and then after you've done the dots, it's a good idea to go back, and you can see that I've done that here, and mark those lines in between. Remember that the chalk on the wool will disappear as it kind of gets dusted out, but adding the lines will give you just even more of an idea of where you're going, because if a dot's missing here and there, it's harder to find your spot, and you won't lose a whole line. Well, if you don't get too far ahead, you won't lose a whole line. I've got 3 of them marked here. Okay. We are ready to begin. Okay, so what I did first on this one is marked where I wanted, and I might need to go back and mark these. Yeah, I'm going to put point at the tip of each of these. I was thinking that I probably could figure that out, but I might need them marked. These may or may not be in the right spot, but they will give me a rough idea of where I want those to be. Okay, yeah. I'm going to go to the outside of my line out here, but those will give me a good distance. And we're going to start with this one. This is a 941. It's a Dazzle. This one is from Wonderfill, and it likely is not a color that you can get in a smaller spool. And that's why I have this great big spool of it. But it's such a fabulous color that I have to have it. Okay, where is a needle? That is not, I'm going to do my first stitch because I want one of them to be square out there to the point, okay? Then I'm going to, on this one in particular, because I want to go right back in right next to where I came out, I'm going to tie a knot on the back just so it will hold still and not pull through when I try to go right next to where that one came out. All right, I think that'll be close enough. Whoops, we caught that guy. Okay, so my next stitch will be where these little dots were marked, and I have a rough idea of where they are. They're about 1/4 inch apart. So we are going to go from here back to that first ring that I drew on. Back in. The other option for these will make them straight because that's pretty much what you get with blanket stitches. They have a little bit of a curve to them, and I like that little bit of a curve. Or you can stitch them as like a stem stitch and add more curve to them if you want. Now, this is my favorite way to do blanket stitches. I call it a step to the right and take a bite. Oh, you can't even see what we're doing. Sorry about that. Got a little excited about where it had to be. A step to the right and take a bite. I'm going to go ahead and just go down at the end over here. I may come back and add one more stitch there, but we'll see. Okay, because I want the other side to be the same kind of curve to it, I'm going to do them the other direction. So I call these take a step to the bite, or take a step to the right and take a bite. We're going to be doing them left-handed, going the other way, or to the left side. It's just take a step to the left and still take a bite. Okay, so let's come out right next to that knot again on the other side. There we go. Now, am I where you can see it? Here we go. Okay, so we're going to take a step to the right and do it to the same. Like, I can't see these as well, but I'm going to try and keep them symmetrical with what's on the other side. About right there, behind, and pull through, and see how that will give those a little bit of a curve going the other way. Let's see, step to the right and take a bite. Okay, I probably should have marked, well, I did mark my lines where I sketched them on, but I'm like, okay, they kind of need to match. 1, 2, 1 straight across from there. Behind, take a bite. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the next one. So it's about right here. And then there's one more after that. All right, since I have marked 3 of these now, I'm going to go ahead and do, I've still got some of this thread on my needle. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't want to do these 2, so we're going to go ahead and do those 2. I might go the whole way around with this stitch. Okay, yeah, normally, because we're starting out at the tip, that's a little far to run your thread. So let's start out here at the tip again. And I'm going to try okay, because I got smart and went this direction this time. I'm going to try winging the dots without drawing them. So let's see if we can do that. So we've got one about right here. 2, 3, 4, so I gotta fit 3 more in there. We can do that. 1, 2, and these guys might end up touching. 3. Okay, this time we're only going that far, but that still is an inch. So either weave it back through so that you don't catch your long thread, or I think we have enough there to do the other side. Now, if I were stitching this on my own, not for video purposes, I would probably go around and do all of the rest of these, this thread with all the rest of them at the same time. Wait, come out over here. But that would make for a pretty boring video if we only did that. That was all we accomplished the whole time. So once I've used up this thread, I'll move back to my original one and we'll do the next thread. Okay. When I Googled peacock feathers, what I got, yeah, these seem to be spread further out. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and then 3 more. 1, 2, 3, and then 3 more. Yeah, we spread this on this side. So you can decide if you think you want to mark it or if winging it is close enough. 1, 2, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, on a peacock eye, or to try and approximate a peacock feather, the next row in is gold. And as much as we like that blanket stitch, I think we should blanket stitch again. So we're going to blanket stitch around here. Same deal. It will leave a line along the inner part of this and will come out to where this green line is. So let's get some of the gold thread. My favorite of the gold dazzles is this one. It comes from the Starry Night collection. So the Starry Night collection has 2 different colored rayons in it plus a sparkle. So this has 2, a lighter yellow and a bolder yellow, and I feel like that gives it a gorgeous gold color to it. So it's the one that I use the most when I was trying to look for some dazzles with my friend yesterday. It turns out I think we found 3 or 4 spools of this one that I had started and hadn't used even all of them yet. Okay, if we are going to want our line to be here, are just like this, only they'll be closer. So we're going to start in here, because this one, they're going to be close enough that we don't care. So come out to the green line. We don't need them to have the curve to them. So we can start on one side and go the whole way around. All right, there's the first one, and I probably will come back and do one more in between there. Remember, we're trying to stay to this outside line. So it's tiny up here on the sides. Now, when you question how close should they be, try to do them next to each other so that you wouldn't need to come back and fill in, or at least that's the look I'm going for. I want this blanket stitch to be Well, more of a buttonhole stitch, but remember the difference between a blanket and a buttonhole is just how close the stitches are. So you could call this one a blanket and this one a buttonhole. I don't know if you noticed that my thread is twisty, so we are going to lift it up and let it hang down and untwist. All right, do I have this in a spot where you can see it? Yes, we do. Okay. All right, let's get going to town all the way around this circle. These are small stitches on the sides here. Also, you might need to tuck your green out of the way to make sure that you get far enough back in your stitch so that in the end it ends up next to the green. We want as little gap there as possible. There we go. This is one of those that because they just go right next to each other. Okay, you're going to have a hard time keeping the end up here that's going to have the ridge on it super close because you just can't logistically get very close. So you might have to put a bigger gap out here on the outside. The other option is to turn it around, do your blanket stitch the other direction, but then you'll have two lines back to back, and I didn't think I would like how that looks. So I chose this one. Someday, when we are doing Stitch with Me's, we will not hear the neighbors working on their yard. Someday. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to want, you also have to, we got to keep them the right direction because we don't want them to turn too sideways. So we might have to take a little bit of a gap out here. Now I am going to cover any of the gaps that I don't like the width of. On my way back around, I'm just going to stitch a single stitch in between if I feel like they get too far apart. Because there is nothing, no rules that say that on a blanket stitch you can't fill in the gaps. Okay, once again, it's very twisted. I have a really long thread here, not on purpose. Well, I guess I did do it that long. Razzle and Dazzle sometimes suggest that you only use 18 inches. I feel like I waste half my time threading the needle when I only use 18-inch lengths. So I always use a yard, but it's fighting me right now. You'll notice, like, look at this one. See how it looks like there's a big gap there? If I pulled this a little more snug, then I'm losing my gap up here on the top where the ridge is, and that's important. I can fill in the other gap down here, but I got to keep those guys close by. Yeah, so don't stress about the fact that, like, you can see that gap. When we're finished, you won't find it. I'm a little curious what they're doing. I thought they were to the point of adding sprinkler heads to the sprinklers. I guess they are in the front, maybe not in the back. And we are closer to the backyard, their backyard right now. Oh. Trying to keep it high enough up that you can see it, that it doesn't get too far down here. Okay, I am going to leave a bigger gap right here, which I'll fill later, but it's because my ridged edge is creeping ahead and I'm trying to keep them perpendicular. There we go. See how that's more straight in the line to the middle. So we'll come back and fill that other edge in. Might be twisting up on me again. Let's see. You can see it untwisting. There we go. Okay, we're down here where this gets thin again, narrow again. So don't, be careful not to take too big a bites there. Okay, going back around, your job is to fill in the gaps. So just take a look at it and go, okay, where can I see a lot of purple sticking through? And in those places, you'll just make a straight stitch to right under the line. Needs to be close to under the line or it'll be obvious that it's not part of your blanket stitch around. Okay. I mean, technically you probably could squeeze one in between all of them and it doesn't need to be that tight. But some of the places where there's a bigger curve or a quicker curve, you might want a couple. Let's put one right there. I'm debating whether I wish I'd put one back there or not. Let's do it now before we get too far away. Between you two. See how that fills it in just a little bit more. But we've got, if you look right here, we've really got those knots, the blanket stitch knots, about as close as we can get them. I don't think we could get them any closer. This one was one of the places where we made a big turn. And we might need 2 stitches in this opening. Yeah, I think I would like it better if we had 2 here. But remember, we got to go underneath that knot up there or they will look like they're added stitches. There we go. Going back to fill in a little bit more. Okay, do we need any more? Don't fill it so much it makes your wool pucker. All right, I think we are there. So let's tie that guy off. And I go through a lot of dazzle. I already told you that it says 18 inches, which means you're going to lose some of it, but it'll also unravel like this. And I used to trim it every time it unraveled, and then I realized all I'm doing is encouraging it to unravel more. So this is on this one. I think that the quality of the thread is going to be good through possibly right here, if not to right here, but that other part is not anyway. So I can hang on to this for the next time when I come back to gold, or I can get rid of it. Okay, next is turquoise. This one is also a Starry Night Dazzle. This one has a lighter turquoise, a darker turquoise, and then the sparkle to it. All right, what we're going to do for this one is stem stitch, and we're going to keep those stitches small so that they stay tucked right next to that gold all the way around. Stem stitch is another filler. It's not a complicated stitch, and you don't think of it as you think of it as a line, but if you do a couple of them side by side, they make a really nice filler stitch. As do lots of line stitches. But okay, so what we have to watch is that we keep these small enough, especially once we get up here where the curves are, that so notice that I went substantially smaller on that stitch. There we go, so that we can keep them up against the gold. Otherwise, remember with a stem stitch, since the stitches are so long from the back of one stitch to the front of the next stitch, you can easily lose them in between. As they go crisscrossing that space. All right. That's perfect, but we need to get down to this next line right here. So we're going to need to do probably 2 more rows. I could just turn around and go back the opposite direction, but my stitches may not lay the same way, so I'm going to go back to the starting point over here and do that again. Round 2. There's on the Live Happy pillow, there's a spot on it, I think it's on the L, that I have you do just rows of stem stitch, because all together they lay really nicely. Stem stitch automatically almost looks like a rope, and so rows of rope right next to each other look really nice. That sparkle right there has got like a loop in it or something. It's in the row before this one. As all metallic threads are wont to kind of get grumpy. They're not as smooth, so they don't slide through as smoothly. Okay, if I jump over to here, see how that will, I put the needle exactly where it's going to start from too, and that will kind of jump over that spot, so it needs to be a smaller stitch. Probably the one before this should have been a smaller stitch so that we can keep it from having to make that big jump. Why that not? Because it will kind of cross over and we won't, it'll skip the gap. It'd be like going from here to there instead of up against the last stitches. It's the thing you have to watch out for with a stem stitch. If your stitches are too big, it will kind of like a spirograph close in on your space. If it's straight, it's not a problem. It's if it's curved. All right, let's put that one down and let's look at where we are with that little circle. I still see some that I'd like to fill in up here, but not necessarily down Well, it does come down at the bottom, I guess, because that the little part of the eye in the middle. So back over to the first side again. So if we were doing these same stitches on a knit fabric, a stretchy fabric of some sort, we would need to be super careful as we're packing the stitches in here tight, because the fabric itself will stretch and let you add more stitches than fit when it's not stretched, and as a result you can kind of make your project have a bump to it if it's got too many stitches in that spot. Okay. Is that pulled snug? There we go. Since we're doing it on a flat surface, it's a lot harder to do that on a non-stretchy. Especially if we're keeping it, flat in between with our thumb. If we were constantly working around like a finger sticking in the middle of something and we were pulling this tight, we could make it pucker, but I don't think we'll have that problem. Okay, I like the 3 rows here, how that's turning out, except I wish it were shorter on top. I feel like it's too long, and so I'm just going to jump up to right over here and just add a partial 4th row. Now, I don't know if I do this on all of them. It may have just been how this one turned out, but I would like that next spot in the center to not quite be so tall. And now it looks like a box. That's okay. Okay, and then there are a couple of fly stitches right here in the middle. I'm going to do a really tight little fly and then one around the outside of it. Oh, we have a knot. Come on, slide off of there. There you go. So a really tight little one in the middle. All right, let's do one more round right here. Right close to the one inside of it. And because my thread's so short, I'm going to take my needle to the back and then pull it back up. There we go. That's perfect. What that should leave is enough room for you to make about 2 French knots or colonial knots, with French knots with 2 wraps or colonial knots in between. And I would offset them a little or they'll look a little funny, but let's get, yeah, that's what we're going to fill that with, is the dark portion of the eye. This one is a bullion knot needle. Now, this thread is loose enough that my cover will slide just a little bit, so it's almost time for me to replace the cover. Probably not this time because I still could slide it out, but I noticed as I was pulling that it was a little bit loose. I only take those off about every 3 times I pull thread off. All right, let's get some. I'm going to do colonial knots, I think, inside of here. So let's start right down here in the corner. Colonial knot is parallel, opposite side, tuck under and twist. One more time around, back down where you came out, snug them up, and pull. I could make a longer tail, but I don't want to. I don't want it to wear on. And now I'm going to go almost side by side with that, but not quite side by side. Make sure you pull that through snug, because that's the part that will keep your French knot or your colonial knot from taking off. This dazzle and razzle are, because they're so slick with the nylon, I think it's nylon that they're made of, I'm not positive. Rayon? It's rayon. Because they're so slick, they will naturally slide out where your other fat threads wouldn't. So in order to keep them in place, you got to make sure you keep that tucked tight and tugged tight in between. And away we go. Let's do one on the inside. Right there. 1, 2. Keep those French knots. See, you don't often see French knot as a filler, but this is a small enough area that, I mean, I've done big areas with French knots as a filler. Spring blossoms on a tree. But generally, French knots are added here and there, but I think they fill in really well in this space. They kind of make the dark of the eye pop a little bit. When I started this one, it kind of seemed like the peacock feathers would make a perfect theme for it. I'm not sure how I expected it to turn out, and I'm not sure if it's turning out like I expected it to turn out, but we'll keep going anyway. The repetition all the way around the circle adds to the oomph, I guess is the right word, that helps pack a punch. We have this to the outside of this shape, and that will be the inside of the next shape. I'm torn about whether I want a line around that or not, because I don't want those little feather lines there. I don't want them to be to turn into like ladder. I don't know if I'd like a line around the outside, and if I do, it's got to be a different color for sure. All right, are we keeping those? We probably could add one right there and it would feel a little bit more full. Let's do that one next. So now that you're seeing what we've done, let me show you again on these lines. So this one right here in the middle is that little dip into the eye. And then this line right here is everything in between here is the French knots. And then these little ones right here are the 2 to 3 blue turquoise lines. This is the gold, and out here is the green, or the teal. Yeah, that's better. And then down here, we'll probably need 2 to keep it the same fullness. One right here and one on the inner corner. Maybe 3, we'll see. Let's do that one, and then one more right there on the inner corner. In my mind, what I see on these is swirly little lines with waves going out from them with little curly cues and things, but I don't know how realistic that is. Those thin little peacock feather lines, those are wispy. When I was growing up, okay, that's the question, is do we need one more to cover that spot? And I think we do. I think a full one might be too much, so maybe we'll just try a 1 wrap French knot and see if that little bit will make it a little bit more even there. It's hard to make small knots with Dazzle. All right, there we go. Let's tie it off. If you're going, hey, that looks like you have 2 of them done. I do. I did one yesterday, but I wanted to come back and show you how to do it without you seeing it all the time, so I covered it up. So there's 2 of our peacock eyes done. Okay, I can't wait to get the other 5 done. 4.5 done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.5 done. I just think that will look spectacular. Okay, we will see you in the next video. Thanks for joining me in today's Stitch with Me. See you next time.